I didn't react when she said it. My daughter-in-law stood at the kitchen counter holding the bank envelope like she'd uncovered evidence of a crime. Her mouth curled before she even finished reading the balance. "Found your tiny savings," she said, laughing once under her breath. "Thanks for the emergency fund." My son sat at the table staring into his coffee, not shocked, not angry, just still. That was the part I remembered later. Not her voice, his silence. The account wasn't secret, it was old. I started it after my husband died because fear changes shape when you grow older. Sometimes it becomes caution, sometimes it becomes routine. $50 here, 20 there. Over years, it became enough to help me sleep. I had used that money before. For my son's dental surgery when he lost his job at 28. For their rent one winter they never fully recovered from. For the broken transmission in the car they still drove. I never announced those things. Quiet help only stays quiet if you don't ask to be remembered for it. But standing there in my own kitchen, watching her wave those papers around like she had caught me hiding treasure, something inside me became very still. She kept talking. I mean, if we're all struggling together, why keep this separate? We, interesting word. I looked at my son then, waiting, maybe foolishly, for him to say something simple. Mom saved that herself. Instead, he rubbed his forehead and said quietly, "Maybe we should talked about finances sooner." Not cruel, somehow worse. That night I lay awake listening to the refrigerator hum through the wall. I realized something uncomfortable. Nobody in that house saw me as independent anymore, only useful. Over the next week, I stopped explaining myself. I also stopped doing invisible things. I didn't remind them about the insurance renewal. I didn't transfer money toward the electric bill when my son forgot. I didn't reorder household medication. I watched little inconveniences appear around them like cracks in glass. Not revenge, just absence. Then I started handling my own affairs properly, the bank first. The young employee called me Mrs. Alvarez with the careful politeness people use when they think age means confusion. I explained exactly what I wanted changed: Rome shared emergency access, update beneficiaries, transfer automatic deposits, require direct authorization only. His expression sharpened halfway through, respect replacing assumption. "Yes, Mom," he said, suddenly attentive. "After that came the property office. The condo technically belonged to me and my late husband. Years ago, I had added my son to certain management permissions because it felt practical. Family never thinks about boundaries until boundaries become necessary. I revoked everything. The woman at the desk asked gently, "Would you like new keys issued as well?" I surprised myself by answering immediately. Yes, no trembling, no dramatic pause, just yes. At home, my daughter-in-law continued speaking to me with forced brightness, unaware the ground beneath her had already shifted. One evening she asked whether I could transfer money toward a vacation deposit they had already committed to. I told her calmly, "I'm reorganizing my finances." She laughed like I was being difficult on purpose. My son still said nothing. The turning point came 2 weeks later. I wasn't there when it happened. In some ways, that made it cleaner. They returned from shopping and discovered their building access remote no longer opened the underground garage gate connected to my unit. Management had updated permissions that morning. My son called me immediately. Mom, something's wrong with the access. No, I said. It's been corrected. Silence. Then his voice lowered. What does that mean? It means I'm separating my responsibilities from yours. I could hear my daughter-in-law speaking sharply in the background. He sounded embarrassed now. Smaller, somehow. We need to talk in person. We had the chance, I answered. The next day he came alone, not angry. That surprised me, just tired. He stood in the doorway of my smaller apartment across town, the one I had quietly leased after visiting 6 different places over 10 days. Modest, clean, mine. You moved? He asked. I did. You didn't tell us. I almost smiled at the wording, not tell us, not why. He walked slowly through the room as if searching for evidence of someone else influencing me. A lawyer, a relative, some dramatic outside force. There wasn't one, just accumulation. Silence layered over silence until something hardened underneath. Finally, he sat down and said the thing he should have said weeks earlier. She shouldn't have spoken to you like that. I nodded once, but apologies arriving after consequences feel different, less alive somehow. I didn't take your money, I told him quietly. I took back responsibility for myself. His eyes watered unexpectedly then, which nearly broke my resolve, because despite everything, I could still see the exhausted boy I once carried asleep from the couch to bed. I didn't know things were that bad, he said. That's because I made life easy for you. Neither of us spoke after that. When he left, he hugged me carefully, like someone touching an old injury. The apartment became quiet again. Not lonely exactly, just honest. I made tea, sat beside the window, watched evening settle over the parking lot below. There was no triumph in it, only the strange calm that comes when you finally stop waiting for people to notice your value and begin arranging your life as if they never will.